What's up guys, it's Dragonfly Mike 77 and today I'm going to be showing you how I've been using the Lotus 3. I've been using it with foil, and I'm going to show you how I pack the bowl. The first way I'm going to show you guys is just with Fakhir, and the way that I'm going to pack it is basically how I pack it for anything but Tangiers. And if I mix something with Tangiers, I pack it the way that I pack Tangiers. And so I'm just going to show you guys how. This is just Fakhir grape, nothing special, it's mixed up. And I just kind of at first scoop it in. And with Fakhir, since you can basically do whatever you want to it in general, the pack doesn't need to be nearly as neat, but I'm going to take my time and get a really perfect pack on there just so you guys can actually see when I'm actually paying a lot of attention. All right. Now, I know a lot of people use scales, but I also know a lot of people don't have scales. So if you don't, that's why I'm not using mine right now. If you do, I normally do about 18 grams for anything but Tangiers. And if I am smoking Tangiers, it's normally 17 grams in this alien bowl. And so what I do is I just kind of mix it around, make sure it's nice and even, break it up. I know a lot of people like using hands. They just kind of put it in there. This is getting near the end of the Fakhir, so this is extremely juicy and a little mushy. So I just kind of move it around a little bit. I am breaking it up a little bit. Kind of did that already. And so again, I do this with everything except for Tangiers. And I just kind of move it around. I'm making sure that it stays nice and fluffy. I'm not really pushing down too hard at all. I'm just moving it around. There's a little too much in there. And I'm just kind of going so it's a little even with the spire. Again, this is Fakhir, so your heat management on this is super easy. It's a tobacco that doesn't really require any advanced type of heat management at all. And normally I use 2 cubes or 3 flats when I do it this way. And I am going to be using the stainless steel Lotus, but this also works very well with the aluminum one. I'm just kind of moving it around, making sure that it's nice and even. I don't need to put any more into this right now. I just need to get this a little more even. And again, this is I didn't mention, this is the Alien bowl by Hookah. This is the 2022 version. I know a lot of you guys really pay attention to the different releases, but I'm just kind of working it around. Again, I'm spending a little more time on this than I normally do. Sometimes you gotta flip it up a little bit and find a little piece of tobacco. And again, I try to shoot for about 18 grams in this. This bowl weighs 203 grams, so just out of curiosity, I'm going to see how close it is. It's 221 grams, so that's right on the money right there. But just so you can see it, again, this is going to be kind of above the rim a little bit. You can take your fork or your fingers and you can kind of pat it down just a little bit if you want to. I don't really worry about that, especially with Fakhir. If it's something like must have, I may pat it down just to make it a little neater. But that's basically all I do. And you'll see how it's just a little above, not much, but just a little bit. Some of since it's Fakhir, the leaves are pretty thick, so some of the little leaves will actually stick up. But again, that's not that big of a deal. And then the way that I do the foil is the same for how I smoke this. for the Tangiers, so I'm not going to foil this. I'm gonna skip right on over and go to how I do Tangiers. And I picked the grape because I'm gonna be smoking double orange, and I didn't really wanna run to the sink and clean that off, so there's gonna be a little bit of a grape flavor in there. All right, the double orange is already mixed up. I just opened this up, so it should be ready to go. And again, with Tangiers, I try to shoot for about 17 grams. I feel like, I know it's only 1 gram of difference, but I actually do notice a difference. I messed around and I tried 16 and that just wasn't great. And I tried 18 and 19 and 18, it was just a little too much. But again, a little bit of error is okay if you are diligent with your heat management. But the way that I do this type of smoke, I noticed that I don't really have to mess around with my heat at all. But at first, I'm just gonna kind of shovel it in there. And I'm going to, despite the fact that I'm shoveling it in, I'm keeping the tobacco relatively loose when I do this. It helps me make sure that it's even. I'm getting tobacco everywhere. And I just kind of mess it around a little bit to get it fluffed at first to make sure that it's actually getting below and down into the trench of the bowl. We're gonna have a loud noise because I'm gonna do something that's like pretty old school. And this is because this is what I do when I'm really looking for that absolutely perfect smoke. A lot of times you just want to end up getting a bowl ready to go. You're not too focused on everything. So I'm going to make sure that this is kind of even before I do a very old school method that does not work with a lot of the more rimmed bowls out there. But I'm actually going to do this with the foil test. This is a pretty old school method. People don't really do that anymore. But when it's about there, and I'm going to weigh it just to see where I'm at. Pretty sure this is going to be 17. Yep. 220. So that's perfect. And as you'll see, when I first started out, it's nice and fluffy like that. It's pretty even. One side's a little higher, but that's okay right now. That up there, so you can see that. And then what I do is I take a piece of foil, place it on top, and I just use my palm. And I'm actually not, when you did the old school foil test with this, you really were putting a lot of pressure. I'm not really doing that this time. I'm just gently pushing with the heel of my hand, the palm right there, heel. That's what feet are for. And I'm just kind of pushing down a little bit, turning the bowl, spinning it in my hand. And then I take it off. Where did I put my fork? There it is. I always make sure that I scrape waste not. And that's just kind of to give me, it makes it just a little easier. And then I'm gonna take the fork and I'm taking it down and I'm pushing out towards the actual end of the bowl at first. And this helps me kind of make sure that there's an even disc around here. And one of the reasons that I'm really into the Alien right now is it is a very shallow bowl. However, despite its shallowness, it still has that wide bowl aspect to it. And that's something that Tangiers really likes. I've mentioned this in just about every video that I've ever done of Tangiers, is that it loves surface area. And the Alien really allows you to maintain good surface area, but then you're not using too much tobacco. I know a lot of bowls now, especially by like Masonware and so forth, they only hold like, 10 to 12 grams. I know the Stinger is supposed to only hold anywhere between 8 and 10, which is really low. And so you'll see here that despite the fact it's still just a millimeter, if that, above the rim, just a little bit. And so from here, what I like to do is I just take it in a little bit. And when I'm taking it in, what that is actually doing is it's actually making it almost even with the spire. Because right now that tobacco is pretty below the spire right there, but you can see where I took it in, where it's starting to actually meet that spire a little bit. And that's really what I want. I'm just taking it in here, kind of just slowly bringing it off that rim. And you don't necessarily, if you're using like a Lotus 1 Plus or something like that instead, this works as well. And I'm really making sure that it's nice and even. Wipe off the edges just a little bit so it looks nice and pretty for you guys. When you're packing a bowl and you want it to be just perfect, it's really about just patience and slowing down a little bit. And that's what Tangiers is really about. I know some people like to clean that spire, but this is how I pack it with Tangiers, right? You can't actually, the only reason that you're seeing black right now is because it's so wide that you're seeing the other side of the bowl, but you can see right there, and there are a couple of leaves that are sticking up a little bit, but that's really not that big of a deal. But it's nice and even with the bowl. I really did make a mess doing it this way. All right, so that's how I pack it, and I'm gonna show you guys how I do the holes. My hole, I don't like my hole puncher right now, so I'm gonna be using a safety pin. I just got this one in, and it is really, really fat, which is not the problem, but it is sharp, but it's not sharp enough for how wide it is. So when I actually push down, I'm just not a big fan of it. And I'm gonna be using these because I have them. In a Reddit post, I actually mentioned that I was using just regular foil. And since then, I've actually been a fan of using this. It's actually thicker than your heavy-duty Reynolds wrap, but I don't think it's as thick as a double layer of the heavy-duty. So it's like in between a little bit. And I'm really liking that so far. So I'm just gonna hold down on one side, switch my hands, keep that same pressure there. And I'm gonna admit something. I have been using the Lotus 1 Plus for so long, and that's what I used when I came back. I suck at doing foil. I cannot get it as drum tight as a lot of you guys can. And so please don't judge me too much on that. But what's nice about this method is it doesn't have to be as drum tight. This is more of like a barrier of what you're doing. And then I grip it, and I'm really holding it with my left hand, and I'm just bringing it down. And then once it's pretty tight, I just kind of take my hand and slide it down there. And again, I want to be able to use this, but I can't. When I actually do use this, since it's not sharp enough, it pushes down too much on the tobacco. And so it brings it down, and it completely defeats the purpose of getting that nice drum. And this is also a little bit of personal preference here. The thing is, you can really control airflow with with the holes that you end up putting it in your bowl. And I tend to like a more of a restricted, so I might not do as many holes as you guys. It's gonna be a lot more than if I use the other hole poker that I have, because these holes are gonna be itty bitty compared to, but I'll show you what I mean. It's gonna take down that foil just a little bit when I do this. See how it takes the indentation there? And that's literally just because this is not sharp enough for how wide it is. And I'm just not a fan of this hole poker. See, it's just pushing that foil down like crazy for me. It's just not very sharp. But I don't go crazy on the holes like we used to with Tangiers. I lost my safety pin. Crap. All right, well, I guess I'm using this for the rest. But, because you used to just poke holes with your sharpened oyster fork. And that's just not what you need to do anymore. And then one in the center. Just like that, maybe a couple more. And now, because of that hole poker, I'm going to retighten the foil just a little bit. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect with this type of method. The only drawback with not making it as tight as possible is sometimes it can affect the airflow, but I haven't really noticed too much of a problem with this type of setup. I'm just retightening it. And there you go. Actually, I'm going to put just a couple more. It's really just a feel. It's just, you'll get used to it after a while, but you can see a little bit of sag there with that stupid hole poker. But yeah, and then that's the pattern right there.